Let's be entirely honest with ourselves for a second. The history of human evolution isn't a glorious, inspiring tale of brave, muscle-bound conquerors tamely mastering the wild frontier. It's actually a multi-millennial sitcom about a bunch of naked, shivering primates who were profoundly unqualified for the environment they were born into, desperately trying to fake it until they made it. Our ancestors spent the better part of the Pleistocene epoch terrified, underdressed, and looking for any possible shortcut to avoid being digested by things that actually belonged at the top of the food chain. Now, grab your crudely sharpened rocks, look out for giant predators, and let's open the prehistoric case file. Today, we are checking into a chilly, 48,000-year-old crime scene located in modern-day Germany, specifically inside the dark, damp recesses of Einhorn, which translates to Unicorn Cave. Spoiler alert, there were no unicorns. Instead, this lovely piece of real estate was occupied by things that were infinitely more terrifying, including Panthera, better known to the scientific community as the Eurasian cave lion. Imagine a modern African lion, but give it a heavy dose of Ice Age steroids, bump its body mass up by 30%, and strip away the majestic mane so it looks like a sleek, streamlined, 500-pound engine of pure, unadulterated murder. For a Neanderthal wandering around the frozen European wilderness, encountering one of these things out in the open wasn't an opportunity for a heroic duel. It was a prompt to immediately lose control of your bodily functions and climb the nearest sturdy pine tree. But our Neanderthal cousins had a massive problem. They were miserable, they were freezing, and they suffered from a severe lack of social status. They looked at these giant, terrifying cats and didn't just see a walking nightmare. They saw a golden opportunity for a highly illegal, wildly dangerous corporate rebranding strategy. When we look at the crime scene data recovered by modern taphonomists at Einhorn, we realize we aren't looking at a proud culture of apex predators doing apex predator things. We are looking at a masterclass in prehistoric cowardice and the ultimate high-stakes scavenger hustle. You see, pop culture loves to pretend that Neanderthals would line up with spears, beat their chests, and challenge a cave lion to a fair fight to prove their manhood. In reality, a fair fight with a cave lion meant getting your skull popped like a ripe cherry before you could even yell for help. No, the Neanderthals understood the core principle of Pleistocene survival. If you want to kill a monster, you wait until it is physically incapable of fighting back. The evidence suggests our desperately cold protagonists didn't hunt this lion. They effectively committed a home invasion while the homeowner was taking a nap. They sneaked into the shadows of the cave, trembling with anxiety, gripping their wooden spears with sweaty, terrified hands. They found a single, aging cave lion resting, likely exhausted from a hunt or settling into a deep slumber, and they proceeded to carry out a brutal, frantic, multi-manned backstabbing. They didn't stand toe-to-toe with the beast. They stood over it while it slept and repeatedly jammed sharp sticks into its ribs like a group of chaotic, unhinged toddlers ruining a giant stuffed animal. It wasn't majestic. It was a messy, panicked, breathless assassination born out of pure desperation and an urgent need to acquire the ultimate luxury item of the ancient world. Once the screaming stopped and the dust settled inside the cave, our frantic Neanderthal hitmen were faced with a massive logistical crisis. They had successfully assassinated a 500-pound hypercarnivore while it was trying to sleep, but now they had to do something even more terrifying. They had to process the crime scene before any of the lion's larger, angrier neighbors smelled the blood and showed up to reclaim the real estate. This wasn't about harvesting meat for a nice family barbecue. Cave lion meat is notoriously lean, tough, and tastes exactly like what it is, a giant, muscular predator that spends its life eating rotting carcasses. No, this entire operation was the prehistoric equivalent of a high-stakes luxury heist. They were there for the ultimate status symbol, the holy grail of Pleistocene haute couture, the pelt. But skinning a cave lion with nothing but broken pieces of flint isn't like unzipping a winter jacket. It is a grueling, deeply disgusting, hours-long cardio workout that requires surgical precision, especially if you are trying to pull off a very specific, incredibly vain fashion statement. When archaeologists analyzed the fossilized skeleton of the Einhorn lion, they noticed something highly specific and deeply hilarious about where the tool marks were located. The cut marks weren't randomly scattered across the ribs or the limbs. They were meticulously concentrated around the lower leg bones and the tiny, delicate phalanges, the toe bones. Why would a group of starving, Freezing Neanderthals spend hours carefully slicing through the tough, stubborn tendons of a giant cat's paws instead of just hacking off the hide and running away, because they wanted to keep the claws attached to the fur. Let that sink in for a moment. Our ancestors were so utterly consumed by the desire to look intimidating that they risked an unpaid internship with death just to ensure their new outfit had built-in, dangling murder mittens. If you just wear a regular, poorly scraped deer pelt, you're just another sad, shivering hominid trying to survive the Ice Age. But if you walk into the local cave-dwelling community wearing a massive, hyper-detailed lion pelt, complete with the dangling paws and razor-sharp claws bouncing against your shins, you are suddenly a prehistoric influencer. You are telling everyone in the valley that you are such a terrifying badass that you personally evicted a monster from its own skin. It was the ultimate corporate rebrand, a glorified side hustle designed to extort social status out of sheer, unadulterated terror. Imagine the absolute absurdity of the actual processing phase. You have 3 or 4 Neanderthals huddled around this massive, cooling carcass in the pitch dark, whispering frantically because every echo in the cave sounds like a cave hyena coming to eat them. They are using their teeth and their dull flint scrapers to slice through thick layers of subcutaneous fat, covered in lion fleas, smelling the pungent stench of a wild animal's musk. They are sweating, they are panicking, and they are spending an unreasonable amount of time making sure they don't accidentally ruin the aesthetic of the paws. It is the definition of clunky execution. They aren't thinking about long-term survival strategies or caloric efficiency. They are thinking about how absolutely incredible they are going to look doing an awkward runway walk past the neighboring clan. They wanted the clout, they wanted the high-fashion influencer prestige, and they were willing to spend a miserable, terrifying night in a dark hole, skinning a monster to get it. It was a masterclass in prioritizing aesthetics over basic safety protocols, proving that human vanity is not a modern invention. It is a fundamental, 48,000-year-old genetic defect. When we turn our attention to the modern forensic data, the entire narrative transforms from a speculative comedy into an undeniable, scientifically verified case of Pleistocene identity theft. For decades, traditional archaeology treated Neanderthals like dim-witted brutes who randomly threw rocks at mammoths until something died. But the German CSI unit completely shattered that myth using advanced taphonomy and microscopic analysis on the bones from Einhornhöhle. When researchers placed those ancient lion toes under the microscope, they found precise, parallel slice marks that could only be made by a highly focused, extremely patient individual using a freshly napped flint tool. These weren't the chaotic gnaw marks of a scavenging hyena, nor were they the clumsy hacks of a panicked hunter. They were the clean, deliberate incisions of a prehistoric tailor executing a very specific design blueprint. The ultimate irony of this entire case file is that the Neanderthals went to all this terrifying trouble just to look like something they absolutely were not: apex predators. They took a massive gamble, committed a stealthy, middle-of-the-night eviction notice on a sleeping giant, and spent hours meticulously preserving the claws just to project an aura of absolute dominance to their peers. They wore the skin of the ultimate hunter to mask the deep, systemic anxiety of being the ultimate underdog. And the most hilarious part? It actually worked. This single, preserved skeleton provides the earliest definitive evidence of hominids utilizing a predator's pelt for symbolic culture, meaning our ancestors successfully faked their way into a position of power through sheer, calculated deception. When we step back and look at the grand scheme of human prehistory, it becomes beautifully clear that we do not exist today, because our ancestors were the bravest, strongest, or most noble creatures to ever walk the earth. We are here because they were the undisputed masters of being sneaky, deeply cynical, and incredibly lucky. We survived the harsh brutality of the Ice Age, not by fighting fair, but by waiting until the monsters slept, stabbing them in the back, and wearing their clothes for social clout.